In the twilight of ancient lands, where kings and sorcerers ruled with iron and illusion, there arose a man of noble heart and sharp mind, Bartolomew, the warrior of truth. Born into skepticism, his soul wrestled with shadows and doubts, yearning for a light pure and unyielding. Called beyond the whispers of doubt, he would walk through realms of darkness and magic, facing sorcerers and armies alike, wielding faith as his sword and courage as his shield. From the noble courts to the desolate deserts, his journey was one of unbreakable spirit and relentless pursuit of the truth that would change the world forever. This is the saga of Bartolomew, a tale of doubt turned to faith, of battles fought not just with strength, but with heart. Prepare yourself for an odyssey of valor, mystery, and divine revelation. The Warrior of Truth story begins now. Chapter 1: The Noble Skeptic. In a land where honor and lineage marked a man's worth, Bartolomew was born to a noble family, raised amid the splendor of courts and the rigid expectations of tradition. Yet within his heart stirred a restless questioning, a skepticism that set him apart from his peers. Though surrounded by faith and ritual, Bartolomew sought a truth beyond ceremonies and hollow words. His was a mind sharp as a blade, cutting through illusions and doubts alike. From an early age, he pondered the nature of divinity, justice, and the unseen forces that shaped the world. His was not the blind faith of many, but a hunger to know the pure and undeniable truth. This inner fire often set him at odds with those around him, but also made him uniquely prepared for the path that awaited. One day, whispers reached the noble halls of a man stirring a new kind of revolution, not with armies or weapons, but with words and miracles. Jesus of Nazareth, they said, healed the sick, calmed storms, and spoke of a kingdom unlike any earthly realm. The skeptic scoffed, but something in Bartolomew's heart pulled him toward this mysterious teacher. Driven by curiosity and a yearning for certainty, Bartolomew set out to find this man whose reputation had crossed the deserts and hills. What he found was not just a teacher or prophet, but a revelation that would challenge everything he thought he knew. The noble skeptic was about to become a warrior of truth. Chapter 2: A Glimpse of Purity. Bartolomew's journey toward Jesus was a path fraught with uncertainty and inner conflict. Raised as a noble skeptic, he had always questioned the world around him, refusing to accept things at face value. His mind was a fortress of reason and doubt, guarded fiercely against the whispers of blind faith. Yet, beneath that armor, a restless yearning pulsed, a search for something more, something pure and unshakable. When word spread of a teacher stirring crowds with words that challenged the very foundations of their beliefs, Bartolomew's curiosity was piqued. He traveled to the place where Jesus preached, moving through bustling streets and weaving past throngs of followers hungry for truth. The air was thick with anticipation and the scent of wild herbs from the hillsides. Bartolomew stood at the edge of the crowd, observing the man whose presence seemed to command both fear and awe. Jesus spoke with a voice that was both gentle and fierce, telling stories of a kingdom built on justice and mercy, a purity that transcended ritual and law. His words cut through the noise of doubt like a blazing fire. For the first time, Bartolomew felt the walls of skepticism tremble. The purity Jesus radiated was unlike anything he had ever encountered, a light so vivid it challenged every assumption he held. It was not just the teacher's words, but the power behind them, healing the sick, welcoming outcasts, standing firm against corrupt leaders. Each act was a testament to a truth deeper than reason alone could grasp. Bartolomew's heart wrestled with this revelation. Could this be the purity he sought? A purity not defined by lineage or status, but by a fierce commitment to truth and love. He found himself drawn forward, no longer content to watch from the shadows. In a moment heavy with destiny, Bartolomew stepped toward Jesus. Their eyes met, one filled with doubt and the other with unwavering conviction. That silent exchange ignited a spark within him, awakening a warrior's resolve. No longer merely a skeptic, Bartolomew began to embrace the calling to defend this newfound truth. His journey was just beginning, a quest that would test his courage, challenge his beliefs, and forge him into the warrior of purity he was destined to become. Chapter 3. The Call Beyond Doubt. Bartolomew stood at the crossroads of his soul, caught between the comfort of certainty and the thrilling unknown of faith. His mind, trained to question everything, wrestled fiercely with the profound truth he glimpsed in Jesus. This was no ordinary teacher. This was a force that challenged not just beliefs, but the very fabric of reality itself, a beacon piercing the veils of skepticism and fear. The days that followed were filled with restless nights and wandering thoughts. Bartolomew sought solitude in the hills overlooking the shimmering waters of Galilee. The vast skies stretched endlessly above him, an eternal canvas painted with shifting clouds and distant stars. Each night, he found himself staring upward, searching for signs beyond his doubts, whispers in the wind, flickers of light, something to anchor his wavering spirit. The wind seemed to carry ancient secrets, as if the very earth remembered a truth long buried. In the quiet moments between dusk and dawn, the stars pulsed with a silent message meant only for him. His heart throbbed with a strange longing, a summons that stirred his soul from its skeptical slumber. Then came the moment that would forever alter his path. Jesus called to him, not with words, but with a gaze that penetrated the layers of doubt and fear, reaching deep into the core of his being. It was a call to step beyond the shadows of skepticism and into the blazing light of faith, a call to embrace a destiny forged in fire and unwavering belief. Bartolomew felt the weight of that call settle deep within his chest. It was not a command, but an invitation, a challenge to leave behind the safety of reason and venture into the battlefield of belief. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and sacrifice, but the promise of a greater truth beckoned with irresistible power. He remembered the legends of ancient warriors who faced darkness with courage, wielding not swords, but unbreakable conviction. Now, it was his turn to rise, not as a mere follower, but as a defender of a truth that could shake the foundations of the world. With resolve hardening like tempered steel, Bartolomew accepted the call. His journey beyond doubt had begun. He would walk the path of the warrior of truth, battling not only external foes, but the shadows within his own heart. This was the dawn of a new chapter, one where faith would be tested in the crucible of fire, and where Bartolomew's true nature would be revealed. The skeptic was transforming into a champion, ready to face the trials that awaited him on this sacred quest. Chapter 4. Shadows over Persia. Bartolomew's journey took him far beyond the familiar hills of Galilee, into lands whispered about in tales of mystery and danger. Persia, a vast empire of ancient magics and secret shadows, stretched before him like a great enigma. It was here, amid the swirling sands and towering palaces, that his faith would face its fiercest trials. The sun blazed mercilessly over the desert, casting long shadows that seemed to hide unseen watchers. From a moment he crossed the border, Bartolomew felt the weight of unseen eyes, sorcerers and magicians who wielded dark arts that rivaled the divine. Their whispers carried on the wind like poisonous serpents, challenging his belief, mocking the purity of his mission. Yet Bartolomew did not falter. The noble skeptic, once tethered to doubt, now wielded a conviction forged in the fires of revelation. He moved like a silent storm, blending stealth with unwavering courage, navigating the labyrinthine streets of Persian cities where danger lurked behind every ornate door. His encounters with sorcerers tested not only his resolve, but the very limits of his understanding. Strange illusions and arcane powers sought to bend reality, but Bartolomew's faith acted as a shield, an invisible armor stronger than any blade. He faced each trial with steady eyes and a heart that refused to break. In the darkest corners of Persia, where shadows whispered of doom, Bartolomew's light burned brighter. His courage inspired those who yearned for truth, and his acts of defiance against the forces of darkness echoed like thunder across the desert sands. But the battle was not only external. Within him stirred a tempest of fear and hope, doubt and unwavering faith. Each victory over the dark arts was a step closer to the warrior he was meant to become, a guardian of truth in a world cloaked in lies. As he journeyed deeper into the heart of Persia, Bartolomew knew that this was only the beginning. The shadows may have gathered, but the flame of his spirit would never be extinguished. With every step, he carried the promise of a light that no darkness could overcome, a truth that would echo across the ages. Chapter 5. The Sorcerer's Challenge. In the heart of Persia, where ancient magics ruled and shadows moved with sinister purpose, Bartolomew stood face to face with the greatest test of his journey. The sorcerers of this land, masters of illusion and deception, had heard whispers of a noble skeptic who carried a light unlike any they had seen before. They came to confront him, to bend his will and crush his faith beneath their dark power. The challenge was set beneath the vaulted ceilings of a temple carved from stone and gold, where flickering torches cast eerie shadows on walls inscribed with arcane symbols. The air was thick with the scent of incense and the hum of unseen energies. Bartolomew entered with steady resolve, his heart beating like a drum of war. The sorcerer emerged, a figure cloaked in midnight robes, eyes gleaming with cold fire. With a voice that seemed to echo from the depths of forgotten realms, he proclaimed his intent: to unravel the purity that Bartolomew carried and expose it as mere folly. But Bartolomew's spirit, tempered by trials and revelation, would not yield. The sorcerer unleashed visions of terror and despair, shadows twisting into monstrous forms that threatened to consume the light. Illusions wove tapestries of doubt, whispering lies and weaving fear into the very air. Yet Bartolomew held fast, his gaze unwavering, drawing strength from the wellspring of truth within. With each challenge, Bartolomew countered with faith's fierce flame, a light that shattered illusions and dispelled darkness. His words carried a power beyond mortal speech, a divine authority that stunned the sorcerers and ignited hope in the hearts of those who witnessed the battle. The temple trembled as the invisible clash raged, forces unseen battling for the soul of a warrior who dared to walk the path of truth. Bartolomew's courage became a beacon, cutting through the mists of deception, a testament to the strength found not in sorcery, but in faith. When the dust settled, the sorcerer's challenge was broken, and Bartolomew stood victorious, not by sword or spell, but by the purity of his heart and the unshakable power of his belief. The echoes of this triumph would ripple through the lands, a story of a noble skeptic who became a warrior of truth, shining brightly against the shadows that sought to consume him. Chapter 6. Signs of Faith. The dawn broke over distant lands, casting golden light on a world still shadowed by doubt and uncertainty. Bartolomew, now forged in the fires of confrontation, felt the weight of his mission deepen. The path ahead was no longer just a journey of discovery. It was a crusade marked by signs and wonders that would testify to the power of the truth he bore. His steps led him to humble villages and bustling marketplaces, places where the common people lived in fear of forces they could not understand. Here, the seeds of faith would be planted, not with grand displays, but through signs subtle yet profound, whispers of the divine breaking through the ordinary. Bartolomew became a beacon in the darkness. With every healing touch, every word of encouragement spoken in the name of light, faith blossomed where skepticism once ruled. Those who had lost hope found it rekindled in their hearts, and the murmurs of wonder grew louder with each passing day. Yet these signs were not mere miracles. They were battles won in the invisible realm. Each healing carried with it a silent defiance against despair, each compassionate act a challenge to the forces that sought to enslave souls in fear. Bartolomew knew that true faith was forged not only in miracles, but in the courage to believe when no sign was seen. In the quiet moments of reflection, under the vast sky that stretched endlessly above, Bartolomew felt the presence of a guiding force, an unseen hand shaping his journey, marking his steps with purpose. The signs of faith were not just miracles. They were a language, a celestial conversation between the divine and the brave. As villages awakened to hope and hearts opened to light, Bartolomew's legend grew, not as a conqueror wielding a sword, but as a warrior armed with unwavering belief, a seeker who had found the courage to carry the truth beyond the borders of doubt. The road ahead remained long and perilous, but the signs of faith shone like stars in the night, guiding the noble skeptic toward a destiny written among the heavens. Chapter 7. The Warrior's Courage. Bartolomew stood at the edge of a rugged cliff, the cold wind howling like a wild beast, testing his resolve. His journey had carried him far beyond the comforts of home, into lands shadowed by superstition and danger. Here, in the heart of Persia's ancient deserts, the noble skeptic faced a battle unlike any he had imagined, one that would challenge not only his strength, but the very essence of his spirit. The enemies before him were no ordinary foes, but sorcerers, masters of dark arts that bent reality and preyed on fear and doubt. Their power was insidious, infecting minds and hearts with whispers that sought to break the faith of even the strongest. Bartolomew's sword was sharp, but he knew that steel alone could not shatter the illusions woven by these dark magicians. The warrior's courage, he realized, was not the absence of fear, but the choice to stand firm in its face. It was a quiet fire that burned within his soul, refusing to be extinguished no matter how thick the shadows grew or how fierce the night became. As he prepared for battle, memories flooded his mind, times when doubt had gnawed at him, when the path seemed unclear, but also moments when a simple truth illuminated the darkness, like a single star shining against the vast night sky. It was this spark of truth, ignited by the teachings of Christ, that now blazed fiercely inside him. Bartolomew recalled the words of the Master, who spoke of faith that could move mountains and love that could conquer even the greatest fears. These words gave him strength, grounding him like roots deep in the earth. They steeled his heart against the sorcerer's deceit. The desert stretched endlessly before him, vast and merciless. Sand whipped around his feet like a living thing, and the sun blazed overhead, scorching the land and testing his endurance. Yet Bartolomew pressed onward, knowing that every step was a defiance of the darkness seeking to claim this world. In the stillness before the storm, he knelt in silent prayer, not for an easy victory, but for resilience, to face whatever trials awaited. He prayed for wisdom, that his courage would be tempered with patience, and for strength to protect those who could not defend themselves. Suddenly, a shadow flickered on the horizon, a figure cloaked in dark robes, eyes glowing with unnatural light. The sorcerer's presence was like a chill seeping into the bones, but Bartolomew met it without flinching. "This land belongs to the shadows," the sorcerer hissed, voice like dry leaves. "Turn back, or be swallowed by the night." Bartolomew's gaze was steady, voice calm, yet resolute. "Truth is the light that no shadow can conquer. I walk this path not for glory, but for justice." Steel met dark magic in a clash that echoed across the desert. Sparks flew as sword met spell, courage battling fear, faith confronting deception. The fight was grueling, a test not only of strength, but of spirit. Bartolomew's heart pounded fiercely, each breath a reminder that his fight was greater than himself. With every parry and strike, he defended a truth far more precious than his own life. When the sorcerer finally fell, dissolving into a mist of vanishing shadows, Bartolomew stood victorious, not because he was the strongest, but because his courage was rooted in something eternal. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with flames of red and gold, Bartolomew knew this was only the beginning. His journey as the warrior of truth was far from over. But with courage as his shield and faith as his sword, he was ready to face whatever darkness still lay ahead. The path was treacherous, the challenges many, But every step forward was a victory in itself, a testament to the power of unwavering courage. Chapter 8: Trials in the Desert. The sun beat down relentlessly over the endless sands of the desert, turning the vast landscape into a furnace of blistering heat and shimmering mirages. Bartolomew had crossed this harsh terrain for days, each step heavier than the last, yet his spirit refused to yield. The desert was not just a physical challenge. It was a crucible designed to test the very limits of his faith, his resolve, and his courage. In the silence of the barren wasteland, surrounded only by the whispers of the wind, Bartolomew confronted the trials that would shape his destiny. These were no ordinary obstacles. They were riddles of the soul, spiritual battles that demanded more than strength of arm. They demanded strength of heart. At night, the desert transformed. The searing heat gave way to a cold so sharp it cut to the bone. Alone beneath a vault of infinite stars, Bartolomew wrestled with doubts that clawed at his mind like desert snakes hidden beneath the sand. The solitude pressed against him, threatening to swallow his hope, but he clung fiercely to the teachings of the Master, the promise that light shines brightest in the darkest moments. One night, as the moon cast a silver glow upon the dunes, Bartolomew had a vision. A radiant figure appeared amidst the swirling sands, an angelic messenger whose presence was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. The figure spoke not with words, but with a profound silence that echoed within his soul, revealing truths beyond mortal understanding. It was a message of perseverance, that trials were not punishments, but necessary steps on the path to enlightenment. The days that followed were marked by physical and spiritual challenges. Sudden sandstorms erupted without warning, blinding and fierce, forcing Bartolomew to seek shelter among jagged rocks. Hunger and thirst gnawed at his body, yet his heart remained steadfast. He discovered strength in prayer, in quiet moments of reflection beneath the burning sun. Each trial was a lesson, a forging of spirit like the blacksmith's hammer shaping molten steel. Bartolomew learned to listen not just with his ears, but with his soul. He understood that true sight came not from the eyes, but from faith that perceives what lies hidden beneath the surface of the world. The desert tested his patience, his endurance, and above all, his trust in a higher purpose. It was a place where every grain of sand seemed to carry a secret, every breeze whispered a challenge. Yet Bartolomew embraced these hardships as sacred, for in suffering he found clarity, in struggle he found growth. At the edge of exhaustion, when his body threatened to give in, a quiet strength surged within him, a flame that no desert wind could extinguish. It was the courage of one who walks not alone, but guided by a light eternal, a warrior of truth armed with unwavering faith. As he emerged from the desert's embrace, scarred but unbroken, Bartolomew knew he was transformed. The trials had stripped away all that was false, revealing the pure core of his spirit. Ahead lay new battles, darker and fiercer, but he was ready. The desert had been a crucible of fire and faith, and Bartolomew, the noble skeptic turned courageous warrior, stood reborn, prepared to carry the light of truth into the shadowed lands beyond. Chapter 9: The Flame of Conviction. The night was thick with silence, broken only by the crackling of solitary fire that flickered against the darkness. Bartolomew sat beside the flames, his gaze fixed on the dancing light, feeling the weight of his journey pressing upon his shoulders. The desert trials had tested his body and spirit, but now a new fire burned within him, a fierce, unquenchable flame of conviction. This flame was born from the deepest wells of his heart, ignited by the truth he had glimpsed in the eyes of the Master. It was a fire that demanded courage, a blazing resolve to stand firm in the face of overwhelming doubt and danger. Bartolomew understood now that his path was no longer one of mere seeking. It was a battle for souls, a sacred mission to defend the light of faith against the encroaching shadows. His mind drifted to the sorcerers of Persia, dark masters of illusion and deceit, who wielded powers forged in forbidden arts. They would not welcome his presence, and many dangers awaited him beyond the horizon. Yet, armed with his newfound conviction, Bartolomew felt ready to confront whatever trials awaited. The flame within him was not just for himself. It was a beacon for those lost in darkness. It illuminated the truth hidden beneath the veils of skepticism and fear, cutting through the shadows of falsehood like a sword of light. Each step he took was fueled by this inner fire, guiding him through treacherous lands and uncertain futures. Bartolomew remembered the words of the Master, whose wisdom had sparked this transformation. Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify the Father. This was no longer a call to passive belief, but to active courage, to shine brightly even when the night pressed close. As the fire crackled, Bartolomew felt the presence of unseen allies, the spirits of those who had walked this path before him, warriors of faith who had faced trials and emerged victorious. Their strength mingled with his own, a sacred chain linking past and present in a timeless struggle. The flame grew brighter within him, burning away fear and hesitation. It forged a shield of steadfastness, a weapon of unwavering purpose. Bartolomew's journey was far from over, but he was no longer the skeptic doubting from the shadows. He was a warrior of truth, a guardian of light in a world teetering on the edge of darkness. With the first rays of dawn breaking the horizon, Bartolomew rose from the fire's glow, ready to face the new day with courage and conviction. The flame within him would guide his steps, a relentless force against the shadows that sought to consume the world. In the heart of the desert, beneath an endless sky, the noble skeptic had been transformed into a blazing beacon, an unyielding warrior of truth whose flame would never be extinguished. Chapter 10. Battles of Spirit and Flesh. The winds howled across barren plains as Bartolomew stood poised on the edge of destiny. His body bore the marks of countless trials, scars that whispered stories of fierce battles fought in the shadows of ancient lands. It was not only the flesh that had been tested, it was the spirit, forged in the crucible of faith and fire. In the heart of Persia, where dark sorcery wove its sinister web, Bartolomew faced enemies both seen and unseen. The sorcerers wielded spells that sought to bend minds and shatter wills, conjuring illusions that blurred the lines between reality and nightmare. His flesh trembled under the weight of their dark magic, but his spirit burned brighter still. The battle was no longer just a physical confrontation. It was a war for the soul. Every clash of swords echoed the clash within. Doubt against faith, fear against courage, darkness against the unyielding light of truth. Bartolomew knew that to triumph, he must stand firm in both realms, his spirit as unbreakable as his blade. He recalled the Master's words, a shield against despair. The kingdom of God is within you. It was this inner kingdom, this divine fortress, that gave him strength beyond mortal limits. His faith became armor, his conviction a sword sharper than any forged by human hands. Amid the swirling chaos, Bartolomew's resolve hardened. He moved with the precision of a warrior born not just of flesh, but of spirit, each strike a declaration of unshakable belief. The sorcerers unleashed their might, fire that burned with unnatural heat, shadows that reached like grasping hands. But the flame of truth within him was a blaze they could not extinguish. The desert sky darkened as the battle raged, stars bearing silent witness to the clash of light and shadow below. Bartolomew fought not for glory or power, but to protect the fragile spark of faith in a world threatened by deceit and despair. With every victory, his spirit soared higher, breaking the chains of skepticism that had once bound him. He was no longer merely a seeker. He was a warrior, a defender of truth whose courage inspired those who walked the path beside him. When dawn finally broke, casting golden light over the scarred battlefield, Bartolomew stood victorious. Though his body ached and his armor was battered, his spirit shone unbroken, a beacon of hope in a land shadowed by darkness. The battles of spirit and flesh had tested him beyond measure, but they had forged a warrior ready to carry the flame of truth into the unknown. The journey continued, and with it, the unyielding fight for the soul of the world. Chapter 11. The Secret Brotherhood. In the dim light of a moonless night, Bartolomew moved silently through the winding alleys of a distant city. His heart beat with cautious hope, for he was no longer alone in his mission. Whispers of a hidden brotherhood had reached his ears, a secret band of believers, united not by blood, but by unshakable faith and a shared purpose. This brotherhood was unlike any legion of warriors or scholars he had known. They were the unseen guardians of truth, bound by ancient vows to protect the fragile flame of the gospel. In a world rife with enemies, both mortal and mystical, their secrecy was their strength, and their courage, a silent roar in the shadows. Bartolomew had been invited to join their ranks, to become part of a fellowship that moved like a shadow across the lands, bringing hope where despair reigned. As he entered their hidden sanctuary, carved deep beneath the earth, he felt the weight of history and destiny settle upon his shoulders. Inside, faces both familiar and foreign regarded him with a mixture of suspicion and welcome. These men and women had faced trials unlike any he had seen: persecution, exile, and betrayal. But their spirits remained unbroken, their faith a blazing torch in the darkness. The secret brotherhood was more than a refuge. It was a crucible. Here, Bartolomew learned to wield not only his sword but the power of discernment and wisdom. Their teachings were whispered in riddles and parables, passed down from the earliest followers who had walked with the Master himself. Each member was a thread in a tapestry woven by divine hands, a silent army marching toward a destiny that would shape the course of history. They shared stories of miracles and martyrdom, of battles won and losses endured, each tale a testament to the cost and glory of their calling. Bartolomew's skepticism, once a barrier, now became a tool, questioning, probing, seeking deeper truths beneath the surface of faith. The brotherhood did not demand blind obedience. They cultivated warriors of conviction, thinkers of courage. As the nights passed, bonds were forged in the crucible of shared purpose and whispered prayers. Bartolomew found brothers and sisters in this secret fellowship, comrades whose loyalty was as fierce as the fires of heaven. Together, they prepared to face the coming storms, persecution, deception, and the relentless forces that sought to snuff out the light of Christ. But united, they were a force no darkness could overcome, a hidden flame that would ignite revolutions of spirit across the world. The secret brotherhood was no mere legend. It was a living, breathing testament to faith's power, a silent army poised to change the world from the shadows. And Bartolomew, the once noble skeptic, had found his true family. Chapter 12. The Sacred Oath. Beneath the ancient arches of a forgotten temple, deep in the heart of a land scarred by time and conflict, Bartolomew stood before the elders of the secret brotherhood. The air was thick with anticipation, the silence broken only by the distant echoes of chanting prayers and the soft flicker of candlelight. Tonight, Bartolomew was to take the sacred oath, a solemn vow that would bind him not only to the brotherhood, but to a higher cause. This was no ordinary pledge. It was a commitment forged in the fires of faith and tempered by the trials of the Spirit. With each word spoken, his resolve would be sealed, his path set in stone. The oath was ancient, handed down from the earliest followers of the Messiah, whispered through generations who had sacrificed all for the truth. It demanded courage beyond reckoning, loyalty beyond blood, and a heart purified by unwavering devotion. As Bartolomew's voice joined the sacred chant, he felt the weight of history settle upon him like a mantle. Every syllable was a promise to protect the innocent, to seek justice in a world shadowed by deceit, to carry the light of Christ into the darkest corners of the earth. Around him, the brothers and sisters watched with solemn eyes, their own odes reflected in the fire that danced in the cavern walls. They too had made this vow, and in their steadfastness, Bartolomew found strength. Here, in this hidden sanctuary, faith was not whispered. It roared like thunder across the skies. The elders placed upon his shoulders a simple yet powerful symbol, a silver ring engraved with the sign of the flame, a reminder of the eternal fire that must never be extinguished. It was a mark of honor and responsibility, a beacon to all who would follow. The ceremony ended, but the true journey was only beginning. The sacred oath was not just words spoken in a secret chamber. It was a call to arms, a summons to live boldly, to face dangers unseen, and to stand unwavering against the tide of darkness. Bartolomew's heart burned with newfound purpose. He was no longer the skeptic who questioned from the sidelines. He was a warrior sworn to defend the truth with every breath, every step, and every battle yet to come. In the quiet aftermath, as the candle flames flickered low, Bartolomew pledged silently to himself to carry this sacred fire through storms and shadows, to shine as a beacon of hope, and to honor the oath that now defined his very soul. The path ahead would be perilous, but with the sacred oath as his shield, Bartolomew was ready to face whatever fate awaited. Chapter 13. The Last Stand. The sun dipped low behind the jagged mountains as Bartolomew and his companions prepared for the battle that would define their fate. The air was charged with tension, each breath heavy with the weight of impending destiny. This was no ordinary fight. It was the last stand, a final clash where courage would be tested and faith forged in the fires of war. From the shadows of Persia's ancient cities to the desolate plains where whispers of rebellion stirred, Bartolomew had journeyed far and faced countless trials. But now, the enemy gathered, dark forces armed with sorcery and deceit, determined to snuff out the flame of truth he carried. The brothers and sisters of the secret brotherhood stood shoulder to shoulder, their faces set with steely resolve. The sacred oath they had sworn echoed in their hearts, a rallying cry against the encroaching darkness. Bartolomew's grip tightened on his sword, the symbol of his faith and his fierce commitment to the cause. As the enemy forces emerged, the sky seemed to crackle with divine fury. Lightning split the horizon, thunder rolling like the war drums of heaven itself. Bartolomew felt the fire of conviction blaze within him, a relentless force that no shadow could extinguish. The battle began with a roar, clashing steel, the crackle of mystical energy, the cries of warriors caught between light and shadow. Bartolomew moved like a tempest, fearless and focused, his every strike a testament to the truth he fought to defend. Amidst the chaos, he saw friends fall, their sacrifices fueling his determination. He remembered the faces of those he sought to protect, the innocent, the faithful, the hope of a world desperate for salvation. With a fierce cry, Bartolomew pushed forward, confronting the sorcerer who had haunted his path since Persia. Their duel was fierce, a clash not just of weapons, but of wills. Light and darkness collided in a spectacle that seemed to shake the very earth beneath their feet. In the end, it was Bartolomew's unyielding spirit, forged by trials and sealed by the sacred oath, that prevailed. The sorcerer fell, his dark magic shattered like glass under the dawn's first light. The battlefield fell silent, save for the heavy breaths of the victorious. Though battered and scarred, Bartolomew stood tall, a warrior of truth amidst the ashes of conflict. As the sun rose anew, painting the sky with hues of hope, Bartolomew knew the war was not over. But this last stand had proven the power of faith, courage, and an unbreakable spirit. He had become more than a skeptic. He was a champion of the light, ready to face whatever trials awaited on the path ahead. Chapter 14. Triumph of Truth. The dawn broke over a land still scarred by battle. But in the aftermath, a new light began to shine, a light born from unwavering faith and unyielding courage. Bartolomew stood amidst the ruins, his heart beating strong with the knowledge that truth, no matter how challenged, would always prevail. News of the last stand had spread like wildfire, carried by the winds and whispered among the villages and cities touched by darkness. The story of the noble skeptic who had faced sorcerers, braved trials, and emerged victorious inspired many. It ignited a flame in the hearts of the lost and the weary, a beacon that pierced through shadows of doubt. But Bartolomew knew that triumph was not just in victory over enemies. It was in the quiet moments of steadfastness, in the lives touched and transformed by the message of truth. He recalled the faces of those he had met, the persecuted, the seekers, the faithful. Each had received a spark of hope from his unwavering stand. The journey had been long and arduous, marked by hardship and sacrifice. Yet with every step forward, the warrior of truth had grown stronger, not just in body, but in spirit. The purity he once glimpsed had blossomed into a radiant light, one that no darkness could snuff out. As he walked through the valleys and hills, Bartolomew shared his wisdom and faith, guiding those who hungered for answers beyond the visible. His words carried the weight of experience and the warmth of compassion, touching souls thirsty for meaning. The sorcerer's shadows retreated, their power diminished by the resolute faith of the people who chose light over fear. The lands once cloaked in uncertainty now blossomed with hope, as communities rebuilt and believers gathered in newfound strength. Bartolomew's triumph was more than a battle won. It was a testament to the enduring power of truth to heal, to unite, and to illuminate the darkest corners of the world. The noble skeptic had become a guardian of that light, a warrior not only of arms, but of spirit. The path ahead remained uncertain, but the flame of truth burned bright within him, guiding the way forward. With each step, Bartolomew embraced his legacy, ready to face whatever destiny awaited with courage, faith, and an unshakable heart. Chapter 15: Legacy of the Warrior. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a golden glow across the land that had borne witness to Bartolomew's journey, a journey of doubt transformed into faith, of silence broken by courage, and of a skeptic's heart forged into a warrior spirit. Now, as twilight embraced the earth, the legacy of the warrior was ready to be told. Bartolomew's name echoed through the villages and cities, carried by those who had seen his valor and heard his message. But his true legacy was not just in the stories of battle or the miracles that had followed his path. It was in the souls awakened, the hearts changed, and the faith ignited in those who once wandered lost. He had walked the narrow road between shadow and light, never faltering even when darkness pressed close. His strength had come not from weapons alone, but from an unshakable conviction that truth was a power greater than any earthly force. With every challenge faced, Bartolomew had proven that the greatest battle was within, and that victory was possible through steadfastness and grace. As he looked back on the winding path, memories stirred, the whispered prayers in desert nights, the fierce confrontations with sorcery and doubt, and the quiet moments of reflection beneath star-studded skies. Each step had led to this moment, a moment of peace forged from fire and faith. Though his journey would soon come to an end, Bartolomew knew his mission was eternal. The seeds of truth he had planted would grow into mighty trees, sheltering future generations and guiding lost souls toward the light. His legacy was a beacon, a flame passed from hand to hand, across time and place, ever burning, ever alive. And so, the warrior of truth prepared to take his final step, not with fear, but with the courage of one who has lived fully, loved deeply, and fought valiantly. His story was more than history. It was a call to all who seek purity in a world shadowed by uncertainty. Bartolomew's name would be remembered not only as a fighter, but as a guardian of faith, a protector of truth, an enduring symbol of hope. His journey was complete, but his spirit would forever inspire those who dare to stand for what is true. The warrior's legacy lived on, in every heart brave enough to seek, in every soul bold enough to believe, and in the eternal light of truth that no darkness could ever extinguish. Thank you for joining us on this epic journey through the life of Bartholomew, the warrior of truth. We hope his story has inspired your own path of faith and courage. If you enjoyed this adventure, please subscribe to our channel for more powerful tales of the apostles and saints. Until next time, stay brave and keep the light of truth burning bright.